Good afternoon, you guys. Welcome to Theater 1. Um, Sorry for my camera being turned off. It hasn't been working lately, but and I will be recording these lessons for those of you that were absent. You can always look at them on our Blackboard account. Now that more of you guys have joined, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So like I said, welcome to Theater 1. I know you guys are excited about getting started in this class. It's a really fun class. And eventually we will get to the really fun parts, which is improv and some acting lessons, acting games, writing your own scripts and everything like that. But for now, we're gonna start off with what I think is one of the most important, if not the most important, part of theater, which is theater history. And we're going to discuss why it's important to study your theater history and what theater history entails, right? So I created a PowerPoint for you guys. And with this PowerPoint, I want you guys to take notes because later on we are gonna create a foldable to showcase, I guess, our understanding of theater history, okay? So I want you guys to take notes and stuff like that. That way you know what you're gonna put in your foldable. So we're gonna get started. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Start the PowerPoint. So like I said, we're gonna study theater history today. Why it's important to us as actors or future actors, future directors, future playwrights, anything that you want to do in the theater world leads back to theater history, right? You can't go anywhere without knowing the history of where it started. So the importance of theater, there are 4 main points that I want to go over on why it's important and what parts of theater are important as well. Which is, so if you want to write these down, that way you can go back and put notes in each and every one, or wait until we get to those appropriate slides. It's up to you. But okay, so we're gonna start with the classics. And classics are classic playwrights, classic plays that pretty much we've all heard about. And if you haven't, well, you will learn about them today. And in the upcoming weeks, we'll try to focus a little bit on the most famous playwrights that concern the classics. But some that are mentioned a lot are like William Shakespeare, Sophocles, and those major ones that go back from Greek to all the way up to modern time, right? So also learning theater history provides an overview of the field. By field, I mean the world of theater, right? Theater history is a shared language. So as an actor, actress, director, playwright, even a costume designer, right? They all know the history of theater. You meet with other people of the theater world, you all have that baseline of knowing where theater came from, who were the big hitters in making it what it is today, right? And that's a shared language. Speaking on the topic of theater history is a shared language that you could have with fellow actors, directors, etc., right? Another thing is knowing theater history, you'll end up knowing the different methods of acting, performing, directing, even the different ways that costumes changed over the years, right? And those are all important to make it in the theater world. Hope you guys wrote these down. If not, you'll have a chance to write them down later. Next, just a little brief, I guess, intro. So theater also presents different parts of history, right? So when learning theater history, you also realize that a lot of the plays that were written by these famous playwrights show parts of history within them, right? I don't know if you guys have seen Hamilton. So Hamilton is a musical, and it was written to show what was going on in that time period, right? And you learn a lot from that musical. There's a lot of history in that musical that this playwright put in there, right? So with theater history, you see and read different parts of history within that play or within that era that you're studying of theater, right? And of course, there's also different forms of theater. Ancient tribes were famous for their storytelling, for their myths, their legends, and that's where like theater really started. You know what I mean? With storytelling. But most people focus on the part of Greeks because that's where theater became more of what it is today, right? Where they created the amphitheaters, the costumes, and the different storylines and stuff like that. So we take what modern theater is today comes more from the Greek side, and the playwright part of it really comes from that storytelling of ancient tribes. So next, we're going to go over the classics, like I mentioned before. So here I have a picture of like Macbeth, Samuel Beckett. He's a playwright we'll end up reading about. The Bald Soprano, these are all we're going to read as well. Oedipus Rex, we'll be reading about that later on in the semester. We'll read the whole play, and we'll do projects around that play. And so here I put the classics prepare you for future plays to come. Many writers take inspiration from the classics. Knowing which they are and reading them will take you further as an artist, director, and all areas of theater, which is true. These classics that I don't know if you guys have seen all the different versions of Romeo and Juliet, right? They don't have to be titled Romeo and Juliet, even though there are a lot of movies and plays that are all done differently. But there's a lot of new plays that came out that the playwrights take inspiration, right, from the classics. So Oedipus Rex is a big one that they take a lot of inspiration from. A lot of playwrights have created their new plays around the same concept and ideas from Oedipus Rex. And you will learn about that later on in the year, like I said. So here are the rest of the points that we talked about. And I'll just read over them, just take notes, write down the bullet points. Like I said before, that way you can really create a really good foldable. So it provides an overview of the field. The overview of the dramatic canon allows an actor to prioritize how he or she selects projects and expands the options for audition pieces. So knowing where theater came from really helps you decide where you want to go in theater, whether you want to be a director, an actor, costume designer, anything, right? The more you know about theater and its history, the better you can communicate with colleagues and your directors, making it easier for collaboration. I talked about this before when we were talking about them earlier. Then we have familiarity of the different methods of directing and performing. These different methods can only help you when joining the field of theater, whether as a performer, director, etc. And the different methods, we will go over them later on in the year. Right now, we're trying to focus on the theater history side and why it's important, right? So this is a really important part about theater history, and I want you guys to try your best to write down all of it because I want this included in your foldable. So here we have from ancient Greek theater all the way to modern theater. And of course, there was a lot of stuff going around the world in between. But these are like the more important parts that really, I guess, make what theater is today and what's still around and what's still popular, right? So of course, we have ancient Greek theater that was from 1000 BC to 146 BC. And it all started with amphitheaters to perform their plays. The plays were based off of myths and legends, and of course, the Greek gods. The most famous playwrights of this time were Sophocles, Aristophanes, and Euripides, to name a few. And these playwrights focused a lot on Greek gods and the myths and the legends that came along with the belief of these Greek gods and stuff like that. Then we have the ancient Romans. Now you will realize when we're going over these later on in the year that the ancient Romans really did copy a lot of what the Greeks were doing. And at one point, the Romans were trying to take over the Greeks, and there was a big scandal, right? Let's say it that way. And so the Romans took a lot of the Greek ideologies, ideas, plays, and stuff like that. They renamed them, but pretty much were performed the same way. They had a lot of the similar characters and the same storyline. So the ancient Romans really took from the Greeks, and later on, their theaters were also used for different things and events that were used for these theaters. Now, medieval theater was after the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages is where theater wasn't allowed. So theater kind of went dark, right? When the Romans left. So it was a really weird time. Theater wasn't allowed. People, that's why they call it the Dark Ages. It was dark, right? Medieval theater period was from 900s to 1500s, but before that was the Dark Ages, between ancient Roman and medieval theater, right? So during this time is where plays were starting to be allowed back in, but they were strictly religious plays and were performed in churches and outside. And most of the plays were based on your morals, integrity, religious stories, and stuff like that. Which is weird that it has medieval as the name, right? I always thought that was funny. Then we have Commedia dell'arte. This is a form of Italian theater during the 1500s. They use basic costumes that were performed in public piazzas. And these were pretty popular. And they're still pretty popular today. You'll hear a lot about them. But they're simple, they're simplistic, and they still captured a lot of attention. Then we have Elizabethan theater. That is from 1558 to 1603. This is where William Shakespeare was huge. You saw his plays everywhere. You heard about them everywhere. You know, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, all of that. They were so popular during this time, and they're still very popular today. All of these, we'll hear about plays from each and every period, right, that I'm going over. But you will see that these plays are still being performed today by so many different people, so many different industries, right? And they're being not rewritten, but like reconstructed to fit modern times. So, which is great. These plays have so much influence on what is going on in the world, in the theater world today. So then we have kabuki theater that is based in Japan. There was some popularity here and there in other parts, but mainly it was in Japan. It was in the 1600s and it's still being performed today. But as you can see, in 1629, women were banned from performing. So until this day, males perform both roles, which is male and female. Then we have Restoration Theater. That was between 1660 and 1714. Restoration Theater was popular amongst rich, middle class, and servants. Mainly rich, once we read into it, but Restoration Theater was performed in these really nice theaters and stuff like that. So more of the rich went like royalty. That's where you'll see a lot of royalty in theater. Then we have American vaudeville, a type of theater not usually talked about, consisted of comedy, singing, dancing, and much more. That's from the 1800s to the 1900s. That type of theater isn't really talked about. I just thought I would include it to see if you guys wanted to look into it more, since it's not of a, I guess, popular theater heard about. Victorian theater, there's between 1837 and 1901, another popular form of theater. Most popular, of course, are Roman, Greek, medieval, comedia dell'arte, Elizabethan, Restoration, Victorian. Those are the ones that are going to have the big hitters, the ones that are going to have the playwrights that are still talked about, still performed to this day. And the Victorian theater, this is where lighting and machinery were being involved, where they would use, we'll talk about this later on, but like that is where you'll start seeing a lot of that being incorporated. Theater is becoming more advanced and more technical, of course, but it's also great for the industry. It's good to be simplistic. A lot of people like simplistic theater, but the lighting and the machinery and the stage is what people are really looking at, and that just adds to the playwright's plays. You know what I mean? It adds to the story. Without certain things like lighting and stuff like that, you wouldn't be able to feel what we feel today. You know what I mean? So then we have modern theater. Theater today has become a range of all past theaters combined, from musicals to even Shakespeare, are still performed today, and they continue to influence the new pieces being written, like I said before. So modern theater has a little bit of everything, if you look into it, and more musicals are becoming very, very popular. There's musicals coming out everywhere, and they're all based on events that happened in the past, or a lot of them are constructed plays of classics that they're turning into musicals, and it's great. Theater is all constantly evolving. There's always new theater coming out, new forms of theater coming out, and it's good to stay on top of it. That way you can move with the times and you're not left behind, right? So, summary. I'm just going to go ahead and read this, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. Although learning the techniques of theater performance is important, you wouldn't be anywhere without knowing where theater originated and how these styles and techniques came about. Theater has a lot to offer to its directors, actors, producers, costume designers, playwrights. These people couldn't be where they are today if they didn't know where theater came from, where it was going, and how big it was gonna end up being. There is points in time, for example, during World War II and stuff like that, and World War I, after the wars, that theater was really a cushion for the people that were grieving, right? Theater was there for the people. They That's where comedies came about. They wanted people to find their happiness again, right? So theater isn't just about making money, performing, right? It's about touching people's hearts and really getting them to a place where they're like, wow, that was amazing. I connected to it. And we wouldn't be able to do that without theater history. And wherever you go in theater, whether if it's just this class as an elective, you can always go back to your theater history to help you with other aspects in your life, like regular history. So don't be afraid to come back, read more, and learn more, right? Also, if you're planning on going big in the theater world, if that's really a dream of yours, I'd be happy to help you learn more. That way you're prepared when you reach the real world, when you reach the real world of theater. Because if you continue this class up until next year and the following years, I want you guys to be performing. I want you guys to be performing at your best. And you can't do that by being mediocre and not knowing where theater came from. You get to places in life working hard, dedicating yourself and time to what you want to do. And same with theater. Dedicate yourself. Read about everything that happened before today, right? Before this time period. And you will get so far in theater. I promise you. Right, so that is the end of the PowerPoint. I will upload the PowerPoint onto Blackboard so you guys can, oops, where am I? Zoom. Sorry guys, my computer. Okay. So I'm trying to get out of the share. See, stop sharing. There we go. Sorry about that. I will upload this PowerPoint onto your Blackboard, and that way you guys can go back, take some more notes. If you need it for your foldable, that will be coming up in the next few days. I will leave it there. You can go back, look into it, read some more. But I encourage you to do your own research too. I don't want the foldable to just be word by word what I told you guys, right? I want you to do your own research. I'm gonna ask you to put in different things than what I put in. I want you to name playwrights of the times that we talked about and the plays that they wrote and everything like that. So I'm gonna have you guys do work. I'm not just gonna have you copy my PowerPoint onto a foldable. That's not how it's gonna be. So that is the end of today's lesson. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Thank you.